Well, hello, my name's Louise Savage. An extremely warm welcome to my channel if you're a returning viewer, and an equally warm welcome if you're joining me for the very first time. So it's been quite the month. I thought that I hadn't acquired many books this month, but I was so wrong. I can hardly move for the books on my lap. So I'll try not to waffle on for too long, or muse, or whatever the word is. But I've got some lovely treats here. So the first one is Last Night at the Lobster, which Simon passed on to me. In fact, the first raft of books here are ones that he very kindly, Simon Savage, my son, very kindly passed on to me. And this is by Stewart and this was recommended to me by one of you lovely viewers. So I've finally managed to get my hands on it. I'm really sorry, I can't remember. I always make a note of the books, but I don't necessarily always make a note of who recommended them, so I do apologise. But I know this is about the last night at a restaurant, but it won quite a few awards, and it just sounds really interesting. It's about the navigation of the last shift there, and I know that this writer's got a reputation for writing about the working classes, so that really fascinated me. And it's a lovely slim volume. I reckon it'd be quite a quick read to curl up, the sort of thing that you could curl up and read in a day. Isn't that cover lovely as well? I really like the bleakness of the snow on that, the front of that. And then the second one, I have to thank Dead Ink Books for. This came via Simon. I think they sent it to him to send to me. The reason being, not because of this amazing cover. It does remind me very much of the front cover. Look, there's a lovely bookmark in there as well. I always, nowadays, write down where I acquired the book as well on a little post-it note, which is why you might see those in there, because I forget otherwise. Oh, it matches my top as well. Well, there we go. That was a careful accident. But this is Blood Red by Gabriela Ponce, I'm not sure. And I think the reason that Dead Ink sent this my way was because it is written by an Ecuadorian writer. And of course, not last summer, the summer before, I was lucky enough to go to Ecuador on a fantastic tour. It sounds my sort of thing as well, because it's sort of fragmented. I think the chapters are quite short, and it says, in a torrent of stream of consciousness fragments, the unnamed narrator of Blood Red recounts the aftermath of her failed marriage in explicit sensual detail. So it sounds really like one of those wonderful, I know I use this word a lot, but I can't think of a better one, like really visceral, gut-wrenching book. And I love the fact that the quote at the top there says, "This book is savage." So I kind of feel like it's definitely the book for me. So I think when I'm in the mood for something really gutsy, and translated by Sarah Booker as well, I need to remind myself always to acknowledge the translators, because that is, having studied dead languages, I do understand, the skill. Translating is a real art form in its own right. Yeah, next up, a book that Simon passed on to me called Mr. Chartwell. And I believe Mr. Chartwell is a dog. Might even have been, I know this is something to do with Winston Churchill. Yeah, July 1964, the year before I was born. Kent Winston Churchill wakes to a visitor, someone he hasn't seen for a while, a dark, mute bulk watching him. And it's a dog. A large black dog, charismatic and dangerously seductive. This just sounds a bit bonkers, like a real sort of daft romp of a read. It says it's described as brilliantly original, charming, dangerously seductive. So a dark comic debut. I would not, I like dogs now, but I used to be very frightened of them, and I would not ever, I don't think, gravitate in a bookshop towards a book with a dog on the cover. So had Simon not passed this on to me, I don't think I would ever have picked it up. And then a book that I am desperately looking forward to is Jesmyn Ward's Let Us Descend, which came out last year, but I haven't read it yet, and I really enjoyed her previous novels. I know she's written non-fiction as well, but I haven't read any of that yet. the first weapon I ever held was my mother's hand. Isn't that an amazing? I'm guessing that's the first line. This is a proof copy, obviously, that he's passed on. Yeah, that is the opening line. I'm as you know, opening lines I think are really interesting to give you a sort of flavour, maybe sometimes, of what the book's about. Mama's bladed hands is the opening chapter, and this is an author who I've learned to really trust, and I know that whatever I read of hers, I'm almost certainly going to massively enjoy. I don't know if you can see all these beautiful gold bees on the cover as well. And then this book, which I knew nothing about, again, Simon passed it on to me. I think having read the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction long list, I think he was aware that I'm keen to read more non-fiction. And actually, I haven't been doing very well on that recently. I haven't read much non-fiction at all. So maybe this will turn it around. So this is Private Revolutions by Yuan Yang. And it's coming of age in a new China. So this has had, again, lots of really positive noise around this book. 4 women born in China in the 80s and 90s dreaming of better futures. And it tells the true stories of their lives during that period in Chinese history. So again, I think that's going to be a very interesting read. And then Simon and I and Chris went to visit the Bookends, amazing bookshop in Wellington in Telford, which Simon had mentioned a couple of times and I hadn't actually got around to going, even though it's quite close to where I live. It's a tiny, beautiful bookshop. The owners, the family who run it, are just fabulous, and spent a very entertaining half hour in there. Really enjoyed it. And I picked up this book, Family Law by Elizabeth Acevedo, because I read her novel in poetry, The Poetess, a few years ago, and really enjoyed that. I thought it was very clever. And this is a story about Flora, who has a gift. She can predict the day when someone will die. So when she decides to throw her own living wake, her sisters are concerned. What has she foreseen? And again, that really tempted me. A beautiful cover. I know it shouldn't matter. No, it does matter. It really does matter. And the prose is described as beautiful, which, given that she is a poet, I think will probably be no surprise. A labyrinthine tale of sisterhood and the chaos of love is what the New York Times have said about it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that very much. And then I've had several visits to Book It in Bridgnorth, which is now my local wonderful bookshop. And on a recent visit, I picked up The Grief Nurse. And actually, this is by Angie Spoto. What would you give to never feel grief again? So I kind of feel like there's a sort of connection between this book and the Family Law by Elizabeth Acevedo. And this is, imagine you had the power to take away sadness, anxiety, heartache, fear, and turn them into something beautiful. Imagine how valuable you would be to others. Lynx is a grief nurse kept by the wealthy and influential Astor family to ensure they're never troubled by negative emotions. So again, I like this for it's a simple concept, and it's like, why didn't I think of that? Why haven't I written a novel about that? I love it when you come across these ideas that just kind of so obvious, but no one else, as far as I'm aware, has ever thought of them before. And then this book probably doesn't need any introduction. I have deliberately made sure that I don't know anything about this story, so I'm not going to say much at all because I want to come to it as fresh as I possibly can. But it's Elif Shafak's There Are Rivers in the Sky. Absolutely beautiful book. Just look at that. And all I know about this is that it tells the story of a drop of water and of rivers, as is suggested. And I, as I said, I want to come to it completely fresh. I don't want any preconceptions about it. So I've deliberately tried to stay away from any of the publicity. And I do know Tracy Chevalier and Safia Sinclair, Philip Sands, Arundhati Roy. Lots and lots of people are saying how wonderful this book is, but I want to come to it raw. And yeah, I was about to say I've read other books of Elif's which I've absolutely adored, which is why I'm so keen to read it. And then I had a trip up to wonderful Newcastle upon Tyne, which is where I went to university, so I'm very attached to that city. And again, on Simon's recommendation, went to a bookshop called The Bound in Whitley Bay. So got a bit of sea air and also went into this bookshop. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful bookshop. And you know, the best thing about it, the books were really well curated and there was a very good section which was recommending books, which is what I took this one from. But the staff could not have been more helpful, honestly. I just love it when you go in a bookshop and you know there were two women behind the counter and they were just so enthusiastic about their stock without ramming anything down your throat, without, you know, try this one, look at this one. I'd got some questions I needed. Well, I'll tell you about what I needed in a minute because it's the next book on the pile. Yes, it is. So this is called Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. And it's an international bestseller, but I hadn't come across it before. Again, it was because it had been sort of, you know, drawn to my attention in this shop. It's described as a perfect jewel of a novel. It's translated by Megan Bacchus. Kitchen comprises Banana Yoshimoto's two classic tales about mothers, trans identity, bereavement, kitchens, love and tragedy, first published in 1987. It won two of Japan's most prestigious literary prizes. And I do think that's something wonderful about, you know, reading in our current climate, because I do think there are far more novels from all around the world in translation than there ever were. I mean, it was so rare when I was young to pick up a book written by somebody originally in a different language. And now it's almost, not quite, but almost commonplace. And what a wonderful way to discover understanding of different parts of the world and to bring us all closer together than to read things, you know, written in other places. So I'm again really excited for this and quite sort of humbled and a bit embarrassed that I've not come across it before. And I needed a book for November's prompt for our Savage prompts. I think it's November because I'm pretty sure I've read October's. Or have I? Is it the October prompt? No, it's the October prompt. I'm fibbing. And the October, because September was the volcano, wasn't it? So this is the October prompt. And the October prompt is to read a book set somewhere that you have lived for at least a year of your life. And I didn't have anything on my shelves that I felt was relevant to that prompt. So when I was in the Bound, I asked the staff to recommend me something that was set or written by somebody from Newcastle, which was where I lived for 4 years of my life, 4 wonderful years. And they recommended this, The Stand-Up Mann. And it's about a teacher whose life is absolutely fine, but her family enter her for, it's by Kay Wilson, I should have said, and her family enter her for a stand-up competition. And I just loved, again, you know, just loved the concept. And I don't read enough comedy, so I felt like this would be a lovely book to at a time of year where the nights are drawing in, and occasionally you get days like today, which has been just thoroughly miserable outside. It's just grey and yucky. So I think this might be a really good book to read for my October prompt, but I'm worried I might not get onto it until November because I've got an awful lot of reading to do, which I'm not going to moan about because it's to do with the Women's Prize and having the privilege of Simon and I being the hosts for the Women's Prize Book Club Live, which is going to start on November the 10th with the wonderful Susanna Clarke, who wrote Piranesi. And I am so excited about interviewing her. And I want to make sure that I've reread Piranesi and her new book and dipped into Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell as well. And also she's chosen a book which we're going to be reading as well, which is not The Secret History, I've got that wrong, The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which I've never read. So So yeah, I've got quite a bit of reading on my hands, as well as the Booker Prize reading that Simon and I are doing together. So yeah, hopefully I'll squeeze this in before November, but maybe not. And then I had to get my hands on this. I had to. Now, Carol Vorderman, for those of you living in other parts of the globe, she is is a very well-known TV presenter. She was the numbers woman, the mathematician, on a popular quiz called Countdown in the UK. But she has stopped that now. She's got various radio programs she does and things like that. And during the recent election, she campaigned so hard to remove sleaze from government, and to clean up government, and to actually try and show that politics can be a positive thing, that we should all be involved and care, and that it doesn't have to be like this. It could be, it should be corruption free. And I loved it during our recent election. I followed her on Instagram, and her she's a statistician. She's amazing with numbers. So her facts and figures, I found really useful in arguing my case. But also, I hadn't realised her background. She comes from a really, really impoverished childhood, and I've just developed a real respect for her. She's been trolled horrendously. She just seems to brush it all off, and keep her level-headed approach, which is that it's far more important that she's out there saying things that might make people think, than the fact that some people might decide to criticise her for that. So I am really looking forward to getting around to reading this, hopefully sooner rather than later, but we shall see. I did buy a bookmark for a certain Elmer fan, and the last time I saw him, I forgot to give it to him. So I'm seeing him later this week, so hopefully I'll remember to take that along. And then finally, when I was in Cambridge recently, again, I've been trying not to buy books, but not worked very well. I couldn't resist this. This was in a Amnesty International charity bookshop, and it's Fishbone Church by Katherine Chi, whose novels I've begun to absolutely love. I thought the cover was fantastically autumnal as well. And I think this is her very first novel. So I think she wrote it in the 1990s. Could be wrong. Let's have a look. And I think it'd be really interesting to see whether I can sort of tell that it's her first novel, whether it feels debut-y. Yeah, 1999. Or whether, I suspect it's going to be brilliant. It describes it, Louis de Bernier said it was warm, subtle and evocative. You'll be thinking about it long after you've finished reading. Well, that's certainly true of her other books that I've read relatively recently. So I think I've read 3 so far. When Clifford Stilton dies, his son Jean crams his carefully kept diaries into a hall cupboard. But am I falling off the edge of the screen? Sorry. I'm so interested in the book, I'm forgetting what I'm doing. But Clifford's words have too much life in them to be ignored and start to permeate his family's world. Ooh. It spans continents and decades, from the Berlin rave scene to the Canterbury duck season, from the royal 1950s to the cosmopolitan present. Oh yeah, no, it does sound good, doesn't it? Sounds clever. Anyway, I hope you've been busy acquiring new books, or picking up new books in your library, or wherever it is you get hold of your books from. I hope that that's given you maybe a few ideas for reading yourselves. And as always, keep me posted on what books you've picked up. Any more recommendations, obviously always gratefully received. And yeah, take care, and look forward to prattling on, musing on, wittering on very, very soon. Bye.